So on with today. So today particularly, we're going to be looking at career aspirations in school. And to start doing this, we're going to have a breakout discussion in our breakout rooms. So Antonio will be now sorting out breakout rooms for everybody. And the question I'd like you to discuss with each other, so introduce yourselves very briefly, but the question is, what did you aspire to be when you were young? I'd like you to think back to your childhood when you first thought about what you wanted to be when you grew up and discuss what influenced those initial aspirations. And if you could be prepared for somebody to feed back your answers or your ideas, that would be really great. We'll give you 5 minutes in the breakout room. With 1 minute to go, Antonio will send a message and that will start closing the room, and that will allow you to finish off your conversations. So the question you're discussing is, what did you aspire to be when you were young? Antonio, can you put people in breakout rooms, please? We've been looking at children's career aspirations for quite some time, but we had a group of new schools join us for a project that we were funded for. So we asked the children, before we'd done any work with the school, what do you want to be? What would you like to be when you grow up? And we asked them just to write down 3 things that they would like to be when they grow up and why they want to do that particular job. So there were 4 primary schools in the end that gave us the data, and they were in areas of deprivation on the whole in the northeast. So here are the jobs that the children wanted to do, the top 10. There are some on there that are on twice because actually they were part of the top 10 jobs for boys and the top 10 jobs for girls. And interestingly, you can see that police was there for boys and girls. So if I split those out, you can see that these are the shared aspirations. These are what both boys and girls said they wanted to do. But the others are mixed up. So we're going to put you in the breakout rooms, and hopefully you've got a copy of this slide because it was shared with you by Elaine. So hopefully somebody has got a copy of that. If not, in the breakout room, if you've got it on, one person's got it online, you can then share that. So Antonio's going to put you into breakout rooms, and we'd just like you very reasonably quickly to sort the aspirations into what are the boys' aspirations and what are the girls' aspirations. And we'll just give you 6 minutes to do that. And interestingly, they haven't changed very much. And this was what the group this morning was saying as well, is that they thought that perhaps, when they were young, that this would be how jobs would split out potentially, and that they thought maybe it would have changed, but it hasn't. So what we then looked at is what was in terms of percentage popularity. So we had, these are the top 10 careers for the boys, and you can see that overwhelmingly out of the jobs that were mentioned, 17% were footballer. Then YouTube and streamer, and that one's relatively new. It was just coming in when we first started taking data on these ideas, but that's increased recently. And then police and other jobs. So overall, boys are wanting with that. Footballer is a large number, but not all of the things, which is something to bear in mind as well. We often talk as if all of the boys in the classroom want to be footballers, and actually it's 1 in 5. So there's majority of boys don't, which is something also to bear in mind. If we look at the career aspirations for girls, you can see it's much more evenly spread at the top there. Teacher and vet are the most popular at about 13-12%, and then it goes down sort of hair and beauty, doctor, all the way down to nurse on 3% of the aspirations. And if we look at those side by side, and there's quite a lot of information on this slide, but you can have a look at that, and you can see that overall the footballer is only 9% of the jobs that were written down, but that's overwhelmingly taken up with the 17% of the boys' aspirations that were there. So it's quite interesting. And one of the things that we think is quite interesting is the fact that police now does appear on both jobs, and it would be interesting to know what the police have done recently to boost that impression that boys and girls can go and get a job in the police, which we thought interesting. We haven't yet done that. Okay, so that's the research we did. So the findings, I just sort of want to summarize that. What we found was that those career aspirations were limited to quite a small range of options. If we categorize the different jobs that were written down, there were 81 different types of role, but those top 20 jobs accounted for 75% of the jobs that the children wrote down. So it was that small range of jobs accounted for a huge number of jobs that the children wrote down. As you can see, the career aspirations are gendered, and those aspirations fall into gender stereotypical roles. The boys gave a broader range of STEM aspirations than the girls. So there were 28 different STEM jobs that the boys were written down by boys and 17 by girls. And on the whole, where girls were writing down STEM jobs, they were often linked to caring professions or the biological health sciences. So that's quite gendered in that way as well. What I'd like to do now is for you to go into your breakout rooms again. It's quite a discussive session, this one. And I'd like you to discuss the findings from our research, so that the different percentages of jobs that children have got, the types of role that they're thinking about, and also think about what that might look like in your school as well. So this was from 4 schools. They're quite a range of schools, but they may be different to what you find. But I'd just like you to have a discussion of that, and we'll have 8 minutes discussion. And if you could nominate one person to feedback, that would be excellent. Antonio. You know, doctors, doctors, vets, that kind of high aspiration. So although you might think that in some areas of the Northeast, you know, people say, oh, there's low aspirations, there really isn't. And I think that's useful to remember as well. This is so our research, the research tool is really easy. We basically gave the children a piece of paper with number 1, 2, and 3 on it and said, what job do you want to do? And what jobs do you want to do and why? So you could try this out with your classes when you get back with them, and then just do a simple frequency count of what they say. And it's, you know, it's quite useful to sort of think about where your children are and what they're looking at, particularly, you know, I'm assuming that you're all part of the primary pilot. So it's quite interesting to see what jobs your children might be aspiring to. You know, and would be quite interesting also to do a bit of a longitudinal thing and start, you know, at the beginning of one year and look later years. And we will be going back to the children we went in 3 years' time just to see what's changed. So it's fairly simple, something that you could do if you're interested in actually what do your kids want to do, and, you know, to the best efforts of their parents. Are they, you know, are they screen free, or is that also affecting them? Okay, I'm going to share my screen again, and we're going to go on. So one of the other things that we did, we asked children why they wanted to do the job, and they gave a variety of reasons, which when we sort of code them into broad themes, it was things like they enjoyed an aspect of the job, they wanted to help others, that was about something that they wanted to achieve, they thought it looked good, they'd successful in it, they were done something and had been good at it, and we were surprised that such a low figure, they'd been inspired by someone or something. Very few of the children gave that as a reason, and those that did, it was often because that's what my dad does, or it's what my mum does, or it's what it's what my friend also does as well. So it's a interesting range. So I'm going to talk a little bit now about why these career aspirations come about, and why children might have these very gendered career aspirations. So this is a flow diagram of a theory of career choice, which is taken from a document called Gutman and Ackerman. And you can see that there are various phases that the researchers put in their model. So very early on, when children are 3 to 5, that's when they're developing cognitively, and they start to classify people according to sort of simple distinctions. So big, small, long hair, short hair. They recognize jobs as things that adults do. I mean, it says here that they've stopped wanting to be animals. Often, we did ask years 1 and 2 what jobs they would like to do, and at least one of them wanted to be a fire engine, not a firefighter, the engine. So at this phase, when children are very little, they have very fantastical ideas of what they will do when they get bigger, and they're happy to be, animals, unicorns, submarines, a whole range of things. But as they get towards sort of age 5, they do start realizing that they're not going to become a cat or anything like that as they grow up. And bear in mind that these are averages, so some children might. As they get a little bit older, and this starts, this starts coming in early as well, is this orientation towards gender roles. And children start to think about occupational aspirations through attributes that they see in people around them, and particularly masculine and feminine roles, and the jobs that they see people doing, and the characters that they see portrayed ahead of them. And at this stage, children are already ruling out some jobs or some things that they would or would not do because of those ideas. So that's what we see in our year 3 data with the 8-year-olds, is that they've already got those gendered careers. And if we give them a list of 30 jobs, then they will choose gendered career jobs. So it's not just jobs that they definitely want to do, but jobs that we say, oh, could you do this? They're very gendered as well. As they then get older, so as they get in towards the sort of upper end of the primary school, lower secondary school, they start to be aware that you don't just get a job, that you have to work at getting a job. There are things that you have to do. They start, to an extent, linking their characteristics with that and things that they perceive themselves as being good at. They become much more aware of status and how some jobs are suitable for people like them and some jobs are suitable for people that are not like them, and that's across the whole range of socioeconomic backgrounds. And again, children will dismiss jobs because it's not for people like them. Then once they start getting to sort of 14 plus, so as they're starting to make GCSE choices, they start to position themselves as and what their capabilities are. And so this is when they often start to get what you would potentially call more realistic career ideas. So, some of the children might realize that actually they're not going to be a top athlete, they're not going to be that top gymnast, they're not going to be that top footballer, but actually they might start thinking about, well, are there other careers that I could do? So physiotherapist becomes very popular because that's a way of working in the sport but not doing the sport itself. That's kind of how children develop, and we've seen that in the research that we've been doing at NU STEM as well. So this brings us on to, how do we support young people in these career choices that they're making unconsciously from a very, very early age? And it is only in the last 2 or 3 years that careers education in primary school has gone mainstream. And once again, in the Northeast, we are leading the way with the LEPS primary pilot. And NU STEM have been working in primary for the past 6 years. And when we started up, very few people were talking about careers in primary school. It just wasn't a thing. And so one of the things that the charity education employers have said is, they've said this about the education in primary school. And it's not about careers advice. What we're asking teachers to do is not to tell children what job they ought to get or talk about the amount of money that they might get for it. It's about broadening horizons. They do talk about raising aspirations, which I disagree with, think have an issue with, but it's about opening doors. It's about helping children to stay willing to consider a lot more choices for a lot longer. It's about making them almost unsure about what they want to do, so that they will then be able to consider a lot more things as they get older. So at NU STEM, we've developed what we call a primary careers tool, which allows teachers to show children a whole range of different careers throughout their primary school. And we have two versions. We have our original version, which was it's based around the primary science curriculum, and we have a new version which is based around the primary maths curriculum. And our primary careers tool is at heart a database of over 100 STEM jobs. But what we do is we sort them by topic on the national curriculum. So what you can see here on our tool is we've got the topic areas on the national curriculum down on the left-hand side of the screen. And then we've got jobs that link to that. So you can see here, we've clicked animals, including horses, and it brings you up about 10 jobs that are linked to that particular science topic. When you then click through one of those jobs, I'll give you an example, you'll get a chance to explore this. We have the title of the job, we have an explanation which is suitable for about upper key stage 2. Now we have teachers that use this from early years all the way to year 6. In early years and lower down the school, they change the text when they share it with the children. We talk about attributes a lot, so we don't just talk about what the job does, we talk about what sort of skills might you need for those. And those skills were developed in collaboration with partner primary schools, but also through research that's been done on employability skills in people that work in STEM. And we also have a Google image search link. And one thing to say at this point is that, so the reason that we have the Google search rather than a picture itself is twofold. One is because this is a large scale undertaking, we would have to get permission for every single photograph, because we are using it for education, but not directly. And that's one reason, but also it allows you to choose one or more pictures that are relevant to your students. So you know the interests of your students, you might choose a picture that supports those interests, or you might choose a picture that takes them out of their comfort zone a little bit more. And so we've left that choice to you. Each link is for the job and a counter stereotype. So if it's structural engineer, it's structural engineer and female. If it's nurse and male. So it brings up pictures that don't match the stereotype. However, what that also does is that you don't have to go too far down the page or the pages before you get images that you would not want to share with your children. So as good e-safety, we would always say never do a live image search in front of a class, because you don't have control over the images that could be displayed. So that's just something to bear in mind. So what we've done is we've created a template for a presentation slide that you can use at the beginning of a topic or at the end of a topic, or have displayed in the classroom when you're studying a particular topic. So this one is for rocks and soils, or rocks and fossils, in year 3. This is actually one of our colleagues, Kate Winter, who's a geologist, works in Antarctica. So we've got the text, we've got the job title. As I say, we've got the counter-stereotypical image, we've got the age-appropriate careers description, which you would choose. We've got the attributes, so you can talk with the children about those attributes, and more importantly, you can talk about how they're showing them in the classroom. So how are they being observant? How are they being creative? And then we have this final sort of discussion question to share with the children. And this has changed over the time that we've been doing this, because when we started out, we used to say, would you be a geologist, or would you like to be this job? And of course, we know from our research now that children have already got ideas about what they want to be, and geologist is not going to be one of them. And so it gave us a very closed answer. Children would just go yes or no, and that was the end of the discussion. But our teachers have found that by asking this open question, it allows for a much richer discussion, and can bring in a lot more about what the children are interested in, what they think about the people and the jobs. And so it gives much richer discussions in the classroom as well. So it's quite a useful activity. So that's a whistle-stop tour through the tool. I'm going to give you some time now. So this is an individual activity. So what we will do when I give the word is that actually, if you just turn off your video and your microphone and spend 10 minutes having a look at the tools, choose a topic that you've taught recently, by recently we mean this year now, look at the jobs on the career tool and think about how you could have included that in your lesson. So we're going to give you 10 minutes. Hopefully you're able to put these links in. Be prepared to talk about what you think about the tool, how you might use it. Was there anything that you found particularly useful? Hopefully you had a chance to have a look at that. And I just want to share my screen again to talk about a little bit about contextualization. So it's a quote about contextualized learning and drawing connections between the content that children have been taught and the environment in which that content can be applied or illustrated. And certainly Jean Milaro found that children were, or young people were able to develop deeper understanding of abstract ideas when they saw how that might work in an actual context. So in terms of next steps, obviously one of the things about the training program is that we have gap tasks in between between training sessions. So we would encourage you to use the primary career tools to identify careers that would fit with your teaching plans for maths and science. Choose a topic and create a presentation, and I will send you the slides. We would appreciate if you complete the feedback survey, and again I'll send you that link straight after this session. And then if you want to book onto the session on the 10th of June, that would be absolutely great. At 10th of June, we'll be looking much more at those attributes that we mentioned, and we'll be talking about that. So after this session, I will email you the copy of the slide template. You don't have to use it. Some of our partner schools do, some don't. And I will also email you a copy of the presentation as well, along with the link to the feedback. The presentation will also have links to the 2 primary career tools, and it also has, if you do use it, then it has a reflective analysis tool just to help you think about how it worked, how well it worked. If we were doing this with initial teacher trainees, then they would be using that as well. If you have any questions, feel free to contact us. Antonio and I will stay on the video call for the next few minutes. This is the official end, so thank you very much for sharing. Hopefully we've given you food for thought and tools to use. And if you've got any questions, feel free to ask them. Thank you very much for joining us.